Hey guys, so today I'm doing a video on aim styles in Overwatch. So this is like me teaching you how to do certain aim styles and what the different aim styles are in Overwatch. I also want to thank you guys. Thank you so much for the 1,000 subs. It means a lot. It's nice to see we got there so quickly. I don't have anything special planned because, yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, thank you guys so much and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Alright guys, so for the first style of aiming we're going to focus on is the difference between wrist aim and arm aim. So when you're aiming with your arm, you're moving your whole entire arm with your wrist. So you're playing with your whole entire arm. Now this is generally used at lower DPI settings. So right now I'm playing on 4.1 in game sense and I play with 800 DPI. So that's quite relatively low, but this also gives me greater accuracy since at longer distances when I'm moving my crosshair I can move in slightly smaller aspects. If I was to have my DPI at like 20 like this, when I move it a wee bit, look how much it's moving at long distance. So at long distance it's a lot more difficult to hit shots. So that's why most people play, or most Hitscan players play at a lower sense. So when you're playing with your arm, you're just dragging your arm and just really playing with that, and this gives you more accuracy when you're shooting. So if you watch here, I'm moving my arm, not just my wrist. So I'm playing with my arm. And this, personally, I feel this is the better aim style for a Widowmaker player, since it gives you more accuracy. When you're playing arm, you're going to realize that if you're in this situation, right, and you need to move to this spot over here, and you're in this situation, so your arm is like, let's say, all the way over here, and you need to move, this is one thing you'll pick up, is you need to lift your mouse and put it back so you can move the remaining distance. So when you're playing at arm, you're spending a lot of time resetting your position by lifting your mouse. So when you go like that, your arm's all the way over, you can't really move any further, so you lift your mouse, put it back to where it initially was, and you can continue moving. And once you get that, you can just kind of slide like that and move your arm and wrist a lot. And it means you can just like, you get used to it with time, but it means you can cover a lot of distance a lot quickly. And so this is how I play. So I'm lifting my arm consistently, quite a lot. So the next style is wrist aiming. So even for wrist aiming, I've got to actually turn up my DPI. Now I wouldn't recommend this style of play, but you can if you're really like lazy. So wrist aiming is where you just move your wrist. So I'm not really used to this. I don't really play like this, but see how it's just my wrist moving? So you need to just move your wrist.
Now I feel alive.
Now this is not as good since at long distance as well, and it's just not as comfortable in my opinion, and it's a lot less accurate. But you can play wrist like this, and if you like flicking a lot, maybe this will be it for you. But for me personally, I would advise to only use your arm when aiming. It may take a while to get used to. Overall, I think it's better to do arm aiming. So for the actual aiming, there's 3 different styles you can play, or you can intermix these styles. So the first style I would focus on would be predictive aiming. So this is just, you don't do this very often. This is if someone's doing like crouch spamming, so going left, right, left, right. So basically what you do is you place your crosshair in a certain point and you wait for someone to go across the crosshair. You don't move your crosshair, you're watching them and you're waiting for them to cross your crosshair. And when you see them about to cross your crosshair, you shoot. Now this is really useful for people that are moving side to side quite quickly, since it's near impossible to follow them like that. So you're better to just wait till they cross your crosshair and just shoot. So we wait for this guy, we shoot. The next style of Widowmaker, and I think is one of the most important ones, is tracking. So tracking is when you're following a target like so. So you're following them with your crosshair. Now this can be useful in so many situations, since you need to track people quite frequently. So if you want to follow, you follow the head of the player. Your mouse is staying on the head of them. So this is good for tracking people, and this is how I line up my shots, by tracking people. Now I intermix this with the third style, flicking. So flicking is just, flicking to your target. So you're flicking the distance of the remaining. Now this is obviously the wrist aim speciality, but it can be done with arm. So you flick your wrist. I'm not very good at it, but you can flick your wrist to the player, like so. For flicking, there's many different styles of flicking. The best way to practice flicking is horizontal. So you're aiming your crosshair at their head height and flicking the small distances. But what you come to when you play in games a lot more is you have to do vertical flicking. So you need to flick vertically. So you hit their head like this. You're flicking up to their head height. This is just generally useful since when you're playing the game, your crosshair is not always going to be head height. You're not always going to be running around head height at all times because elevations are different. So you need to be able, as well as flicking horizontally, to flick vertically and diagonally. So my aim style is a bit funny. Now, what I generally do is I flick to near the person and then track them remaining, especially if they're moving. So I'd flick to the general person and then do the tracking. So if like this, I'd go like that. That's like so. This is good to get in the habit of, since you know you're trying to catch these people. Flicking isn't as accurate all the time because you can miss the shots. The more you practice flicking, the better you get. But generally, I flick and then track. So I also do flicking. The best way to deal with flicking is what I do is I flick near the player, right, and then half a second later I correct with the smaller flick. So instead of doing big flicks like so. You see how these are harder to hit? You're going to miss more of your shots doing this because, you know, that's quite a big distance, that. So what I like to do is I like to flick near and then flick the remaining. So I flick like that. So I'm flicking near and then flicking the remaining. So I'm flicking near the target and flicking my mouse upwards. So I'm going flick near, so flick near, flick the remaining. Now these shorter distances helps you prove with consistency. So the more you practice, the more you get like better at the small flicks, and they're generally more accurate than the big flicks, since if you're covering more distance it's harder to flick the exact distance. So with practicing these general techniques you'll learn to play Widow a bit better. So I'd suggest using arm aiming and learning all styles of predictive aiming, flicking and tracking. And the best two to focus on currently if you're focusing on proving would be to practice your flicking and practice your tracking. And once you got that down, you can move on to predictive aiming, or you can do all three. So I'm going to show you a couple of maps and stuff I do to warm up on these things. So for first example, when I first start the game, I'm on training arena, just for a quick warm up. And it's nice to play just flicking to the players. So you're just trying to flick and warm up. So because the training bots' heads are quite large, it's easier to flick and hit them. So you like so. And I just go around just a couple of minutes, you know, jumping around, flicking, and just warming up mine, because your wrist is going to be quite cold, and when your wrist is cold, your muscle isn't warm. So it's just, once you warm up your muscle, you're hitting a lot more shots. It's just general. Alright, so for one of the first warm-ups I use, I like to use the code TKBR3. Now this is an aerial aim trainer. You don't need anyone for this, this is just good warm-up. So this allows you to practice your tracking and your flicking, but I would suggest mainly practicing your tracking on this one. So you can pick any Hitscan hero or any projectile hero you want for this map. And now you have the enemy heroes flying up in the air. Now the good part about this is when somebody's moving in the air, they're moving in a very predictable pattern. They're always moving in an arc pattern. So you can watch this break, it goes like an arc. So this is very good to warm up, you know, your tracking, because you know where they're going to go. So you're just tracking the movement they're going to be doing. So this is a very good way to warm up. So you can go like nice and warm in your tracking. Now I'm very bad at this game, and I've not really warmed up enough, so maybe I should follow my own advice. So this just lets you improve your tracking. There's also stuff where you can have infinite ammo, you can choose direction, and you can move the distance away once you're getting a bit more comfortable. And you can move your tracking at longer distance, but it's harder to hit. Alright, so the next code is EMMYZ. Now unfortunately I can't remember the original code for this, so I've created a new one. If anyone wants to know, if anyone knows in the comments, I'll pin it. But basically, I use this to warm up my tracking or flicking on the X plane. Now, because the movement of the Y plane and the Z plane are predictable arc patterns, and you know where they're moving, this one is very good since you're practicing the X plane. So this is the side-to-side movement, and these bots are specially designed to run away from your crosshair. So this is where you have to practice your tracking and especially your predictive aiming or your flicking. So for Widowmaker, I use this to warm up my tracking and predictive aiming. So as you can see, the fire is moving away from my crosshair in a very unpredictable pattern, and you've got to practice by trying to hit this. So like so, we're hitting the Farah, but she's getting pocketed by the Mercy, so we've got to try and kill her. Very nice. And then the Mercy starts falling. That's a very good map to warm up, but it's quite difficult since, as you can see, look at the way they're moving away from my crosshair. So if I'm aiming for this BAP, what I would do with my style is I'd flick near and then flick the remaining. So I'd flick near, track, and then I'd predict where they're going to be next. So I'd flick to the BAP, like so, and I'm going to say, right, he's going to move like that, he's going to jump up. The Tracer's going to move a bit further to the right or the left. See how she did a jump there? That predictable pattern was easy to, like, know, so I could hit her. Same for Genji. Now, another warm-up that I like to do is Widow Headshot. Now, Widow Headshot is a grey matter for me. Because there's many things in Widow Headshot that are good, but there's so many that are bad. So, with Widow Headshot, it's really good since you're warming up your aim, you're aiming at head height, you're learning the Widow head height mainly. And it's just really good warm up because there's so many and you've got to look around and flick around, and it's just really good warm up. What I don't like is the people that play Widow Headshot are either kind of really not very good or they're absolutely amazing. Now, you get a lot of these platinums in Widow Headshot that are fantastic at Widow Headshot. Like, absolutely, like, probably even better than me. Because they play this game religiously. They play Widow Headshot religiously. But they don't actually play the game. Now, this is where that annoys me. Since, you know, they're always playing Widow Headshot, but they're not actually improving on the game. Now, aim is a large portion of Hitscan, but it's not all of it. So if you're playing only Widow Headshot, you're only improving aim. But you go and play a game, you know nothing about positioning, coordination, ult conservation, when to engage, when to disengage. The list is endless. So these players, even though individually their Hitscan skills are so talented, they're just not good players. And also, another factor is a lot of people in Widow Headshot are crouch spammers. All they do is crouch spam. Now, in Widow Headshot, that's really good because it makes it hard to hit your head. But in game, you know, you don't just get to hit the head. You have your body. And if someone's sitting crouch spamming in front of you like that, you can double shot their body and they're dead. So you've got to be careful with Widow Headshot, because if you play too much, you're not going to be improving as much as you think.